of our work was modernizing New York City, adding a lot of futuristic buildings, and then adding the host city, which was off the southern tip of Manhattan. So building that, and then the associated tower, Hale's Tower, um, which was a pretty large build for us. It involved a lot of intricate webbing, which we ran a really nice simulation to tie it all together. So then we ended up with an asset that was essentially all of the future buildings for New York City with this extended bridge out to host city, and that existed as a single piece that we were able to drop into all of our match moves. So it sat really nicely each time that we used it. It did require quite a bit of modification as buildings would get in the way of landmark buildings, and we needed to nudge host city over to so that it was more visible. But for the most part, the way that an asset of that size was handled was actually quite nice. We were given a few key pieces of art. They have always done quite a bit of concept work prior to each season, and so we were given a few key pieces of art that said, like, this is our vision for New York. There's a lot of walkways, there's a lot of greenery, both on top of the buildings and on the ground level, and there are more futuristic buildings scattered about, but rarely are they the focus of the shots. I think part of it is the New York skyline is so iconic that it's you can't step all over it. You want to see the Empire State Building, and you want to see Freedom Tower, and you want to see, the Chrysler Building and Times Square, and people know those landmarks so well that the future buildings that we add definitely more on the outskirts. And there's a lot of times where once they got to a certain level, we'd be reviewing a shot and saying, like, wait, is this our building that we added, or I can't remember. And we would have to kind of check back on that. But, it was just finding the right places for these buildings to sit in and feel right. We had a few very wide shots of Manhattan to sort of flesh that out. But then, as I said, it's like once we started getting into more shot production, we would just have to, like, remove a building or slide it over or adjust it so that we weren't stepping all over the New York skyline. We were handed quite a bit of concept art for the tower, including some 3D models that we had to pull in, and instead of cleaning up the 3D models, we just rebuilt everything entirely from scratch. It did lack quite a bit of detail on the top end and parts that we had seen, so our build artist was able to add a lot of his own details and flair, and we could craft that into a place that they became really happy with. And we did make a few modifications along the way per their request, and I think all of it turned out to be really nice. Part of the challenge, it is completely white, so you don't have a lot of scale details to grab onto to understand, like, how large it is. And when we started building it, we never knew how close or how far we would be at all times. So we did construct it to hold up fairly close. But even with what we did, we found we needed so much more detail just touched in to make it feel a little weathered, been around for a little bit longer, and kind of give those impressions of maybe water that had settled on the top and then dried and left little puddles here and there. And so I think all of those small details help, no matter how far you are from the tower. With Temperance, we had a ton of reference photography of the set that they worked on. And so extending that was really just referencing everything that they'd had. We had a big LiDAR scan of that entire site. So we knew exactly in space where everything should be sitting. And it was a little bit of, again, just a lot of back and forth of what buildings feel correct back there. How robust should this bridge be for the train to travel across? And so, and then of course, like the train that everybody pulls up into, that we did a full 3D build on, and that was a full, completely constructed shot. Our The build artist that we have, Bill Arance, is a huge train fan, and so that build was like he was just in heaven. He had many suggestions that were spot on, and we just said, "Go for it, Bill. Keep going. It's great." So he had a wonderful time with that. He also built the tower, and he loved that every moment of that too. He's a great guy.